This video is sponsored by Manta Sleep. Nothing says getting ready for the Christmas spirit like a movie made by mainline Disney, all set in a summertime tropical season with bright blue skies, open waters, and a whole lot of warmth. Although I guess they're also releasing Mufasa 2 in the same-ish slot, so Disney's just chucking them out as fast as they can. And chucking them out as fast as they can is probably one of the best early descriptors of Moana 2. So I finally got to see it over in the UK as it came out a couple days later than the US release, and it's an interesting one, right? Currently, as it stands, reviews very much are 60% generally from critics and 80% generally from audiences. And I very much saw that reflected in the cinema screening today as, well, you know, a lot of families and a lot of kids, and they were jumping around, stamping their feet. These 4-year-olds have no idea about cinema etiquette, but they were enjoying it. It was an enjoyable movie, but I can't help but say that Moana 2 was just a little bit of a missed opportunity. Of course, it's a Disney sequel. It's always going to be on the back foot. We have a long history of Disney and Pixar never really working out how to do their sequels absolutely in the best form. Although I guess with all the most recent examples and Pixar having a little bit of a come up, maybe the problem really has transported away from Pixar and onto Disney instead. Because the thing is, I can't exactly come out here and say that this is the terrible Moana 2 necessarily, but it is a notable step down from Moana 1, and there's a good bit of a reasoning to that. As truth be told, this is admittedly a straight-to-DVD sequel, glorified with a whole bunch more of a budget. Originally, there was going to be a straight-to-Disney Plus sequel series that then got upgraded into this movie premise. Now, sometimes that may be great news. Oh, great, brilliant budget, the animation will be brilliant, and of course, maybe that means the actual storyline is worth turning into a movie. However, instead of trying to work out what is presumably a whole season, or at least mini-series, amount of content into a nice, comfortable 100-minute runtime, instead what we get is a lot of skimming on a lot of ideas that I like in a bubble. I like the concept of where they expanded the Moana universe, but they didn't master the execution on any of it. So let's talk about all the different points one by one, starting off with the characters. Now, I'm always going to have a little bit of a jaded perspective on TV show sequels after the wonderful time of Megamind Rules, which isn't necessarily a good comparison, but there are some links in there. One of the most notable ones, at least for me personally, is the introduction of Moana having this little sister character. She is like the ultimate representation, rerun of that TV trope of incorporating an extra younger character to be the new protagonist for the even younger audience that the TV series is aiming for. We saw this very obnoxiously in the Megamind Rules TV show, and I can kind of see it here. But first, let me tell you a little bit about our sponsor, Manta Sleep. Now, Manta Sleep makes the world's best sleep masks and functional sleep accessories. Don't you just hate light pollution disrupting your deep sleep? Genuinely, it probably affects you more than you realize. And better sleep will always work better than coffee. And even without this sponsor, I would genuinely recommend using an eye mask for better quality sleep. In my real life, I actively use Manta Sleep's standard mask. So picture my surprise when the company actually approached me for this spawn. Alongside this standard mask, you can also find great product upgrades like the Manta Silk Mask, the Manta Weighted Mask, and this here, the Manta Sleep Mask Sound with 20 hours Bluetooth capability. All masks provide true 100% blackout sight as well as zero eye pressure. See this padding? This is how all the magic happens. So, if you're interested in improving the quality of your sleep like me, I'm very passionate about getting my full 8 hours of good sleep, then you can use my link in the description for a discount at checkout. Link at the top of the description. Thanks again to Manta Sleep for sponsoring us and sending their best sleep mask. I love their products IRL, so this is a real treat to work together. But anyway, let's get back to the main video. Now, with the actual character of this little sister, I think it works. They learn to keep her off the boat, she stays away on the island, and she just complains half the time. Her role is very much trying to be the reason for Moana to enjoy more of the familial island pride that she has. They are the kind of person that they don't want to leave behind on their long, adventurous journeys. Which is a nice idea. I guess it's kind of nice to have the reflection of, in the first movie, she's like, the sea, it calls me, and now in the sequel, she's like, I don't really want to go, I don't want to leave. It's kind of an assassination of character, but you get where it's going. It's an interesting conflict to explore, but of course with that sort of inner conflict, you're gonna need a little bit of runtime put into it, and maybe a TV series would have done so with a slightly less fruitful budget, But in this movie, they don't. They spend a good chunk of time at the beginning, and then she does go, and then she somewhat appears at the end, but it's as minimal as you can get it, and it doesn't necessarily elevate the story. Other than the fact that a mimic ghost mirage of her appears at one point. It's nice, it's fine. I think it is very much an emblem of the TV series coming to movie. It's certainly not the most egregious sin, but it's something worth noting. It was the first thing I noticed, essentially. But of course, with it having that minimum runtime, I of course think there could have been a lot more depth to incorporate in there. I mean, they have a whole point of how 3 days feels like forever for her, and that would have been an interesting real conflict if this upcoming sequel journey was a genuinely long one to have to deal with. I'm not asking for interstellar levels of I want her to age 50 years while she's gone, but the actual journey takes, like, what, 2 nights, maybe? Like, it's another 3 days. The impact of that is lost, whereas maybe if the ending was actually, it took a year to take place, you know, we have all sorts of almost time skips logically, and she had aged up slightly. That could have been a hint of, like, exploring that conflict more, even if it does lead into a Moana 3 instead, which, I mean, they're absolutely doing, so look at that post-credit scene. We'll get there when we get there. But it very much felt like an inclusion that wasn't necessarily mandatory. It was fine, but certainly not executed to the best it could have been. It was just a little bit of fluff, somehow added into all sorts of other elements all coming in together. So moving on from that, we then have the ensemble crew team, which, similar vibe, I really enjoyed. More so just handling the concept that there is a whole team. We get to see a little bit more of the island goers themselves on their adventures, showing off their different character archetypes and seeing a little bit more of Moana's home rather than just Moana by herself in a bubble. Brilliant. Perfect expansion. I love it a lot. You got the kind of architect, engineer girl, big new muscle brute guy that's kind of a Maui clone, but different, I guess. And then retired grandpa, because comic relief. I don't know why Moana would necessarily bring him. And I like their dynamics, but yeah, this is it again. You need a whole bunch of runtime into this. All 3 of them have interesting traits. They might faintly get an arc, but when you think about the bigger picture, a lot of them really didn't contribute much. I think one of the most egregious, for me at least, is the retired old man. He was probably one of my favorite of the crew. He's a great comedic relief to add to the humor side of the plotline, I guess. And we'll get to the jokes at some point. But his role was, he was taken on as like a farmer so that they could have food, right? So he spends half of this movie complaining, but the other half in the background making plants, and those plants don't come back for food. If it was just a single scene of, hey, I've made some food for us in these dying times, bring us together, or something as like a pep talk, that'd be cool, that'd be nice to see in some form. But instead, all he does is at one point they're like, we need to get rid of our weight. So then after all of this plant building inside of a hut with no sunlight, he chucks them out. That's about it, and he goes into the ocean when he can't swim, but he's got coconut armbands. Like, it's nice, I like him there, I want him more, but there's 100 minutes, and he gets no real contribution to the plot in a way that I think is satisfying. I think at least the other 2 have a little bit more of a flow in there, like playing around with the ships, quite nice. It's pretty simple, but I do like the idea of the other guy idolizing Maui, and he's a little bit creeped out. It's pretty surface level. But there is something they do with this guy. I guess we're going to faintly go into general spoiler territory, so you've been warned. We're talking about the whole thing all at once, back and forth a little bit. There is a point with Muscle Man in the middle actually having a near-death experience. A bit dark for a Disney movie, but we also confirm everybody becomes a ghost anyway, so it's kind of not a thing to mourn about. But anyway, he has a moment, he survives his near-death experience, and he mopes out on the coast, having his, you know, grieving moment to himself. That, I of course think, brilliant expansion, I love that a lot. And you could very much see how this could be half an episode in a TV series, really going a little bit more emotionally in depth with the idea these are lives at stake, these are big, serious, scary journeys and adventures they're going on, and they need to work out what they're doing from there. But what actually happens when you think about it is he goes and mopes on the coast. Moana separately is sad, so Maui goes to give her a little bit of a pep talk in the form of song. Probably the closest thing to one of my favorite songs. We'll get to the songs as well at some point. There's lots to talk about in this movie. There's a lot of elements just blended together to make this. It's very clearly a full series trunked down. But then after Moana feels better, she goes over to give the whole crew a pep talk, and you think he very much needs to hear these words as well, because he's literally mourning and in a moment of like shock after a pretty traumatizing experience, but he's, by this point, already forgotten. Instead, the crew have already been building another ship, and Moana, mid-pep talk, interrupts herself to go and look at the ship. Like, there is a genuine, really good emotional beat. I just want emotions in my damn movies, man. I want like a serious sit-down piece. And I guess that's in the movie in some places, but it's not here, and I think it could have been. You have all these characters, they're enjoyable, I love the concept that they're expanded, they're not sinful for existing, but none of them get the runtime they deserve to really justify their existence, or better still, elevate the movie to be better than it is. But forget about new characters, let's go with the same old, Moana and Maui. Yeah, great, classic, good. I think one of the highlights of the first movie is, of course, the chemistry between the two of them. It's still prevalent here. I kind of wanted to be, like, against Maui for a lot of this movie. He shows up as a hawk first and does the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson eyebrows, and I'm like, oh, God, this is going to be this again. Is he going to be able to lose a fight? But hey, he does. He loses fights off screen, technically, but hey, at least he has genuine conflict going for him. I think he's great. I think he's fine. Honestly, I haven't really got any notes for Maui himself and Moana and their dynamic. I think together, great, brilliant, liked it all the way through. It's all the stuff that's new and different that really stands out as either a great highlight or a missed opportunity, or sinful for existing in the first place. So before we talk about the endgame stuff with those duos, let's move on to something else. How about we talk about the Bat Lady, eh? This, I think, is clearly one of the most egregious weird choices the entire movie makes, right? The whole sort of early setting for the main adventure, other than the ocean, is this Clam prison thing, right? Which already, brilliant setting, love that location. A giant colossal monster, yeah, I want to see more of that. Very much reminds me of Strange World, but the good bits that I just conceptually imagine about rather than the actual plotline that movie got. And in this realm, she's caged in this place, but we don't really see that she's stuck there. She just says that she's stuck there. There's a whole element of this portal, right, that she's not willing to open for Maui. Moana eventually shows up with the whole crew, and then Moana manages to open the portal. I can't tell if she actually opened the portal or if the Bat Lady just allowed her to open the portal. Either way, whether that's Moana is magically special and can do that and Maui's impressed, or it literally is just Matangi's big master plan that actually she wants to wait until Moana collabs with Maui before they actually go through this teleporting portal that takes them straight to the end of the movie. And that's very much what they basically say when Maui's going away. So then this whole plot of this movie has clearly been a master plan for her. As it turns out, if you remove the big curse storm that they have to tackle, then she becomes free of this Clam somehow. We don't see a barrier necessarily, it's just a betrayal of the big bad demigod in the sky, right? And also you can see the fact through all of her song number, which also I'd probably say is actually one of my favorite songs. Just enjoyable, the way she moves as well, very satisfying. I think I just like her in general, a great Disney villain. And she's clearly a villain, right? She looks evil, she's got the green, she has big open eyes in an intimidating way, but then she never really appears again. This whole big master plan to clearly get out of the cage and probably do some betrayal things doesn't happen at all. She's not the secret evil villain for the final act. We cut early, and I assume just ship it off for Moana 3 to do something instead. But even in that way, that's not necessarily the case, as there's more confusions as we get to the post-credits scene that does involve her. So let's poke a little bit into spoiler territory. We're going to talk about the final boss and the villain points. It's the other character to talk about, and it's going to be relevant. Nalo is the other main god scary storm in the sky. And in relation to Matangi, when they do eventually defeat the storm's curse, we see her in a post-credit scene with this storm god just sort of there as a lackey. I was going on the assumption that she is betraying him, and so the moment that his curse is gone, she's released from the Clam, she's gonna fly away, escape, and be the big bad. Even if that's the plot for Moana 3, you would think she would not just linger around like a lackey, worried that she's gonna be smited by him for betraying him. No, she's just there anyway, and then she gets semi-smited by him into handcuffs. Like, it's an idea there that I thought was going somewhere, and even in waiting for the potential Moana 3 plotline, it doesn't look like that's where they're going, or if it is where they're going, they first have this weird blip of a post-credits that's more of a Marvel gag than anything else. Maybe it's non-canon, what do I know? But then, yes, moving on to Nalo themselves, I think one of the most upsetting things is also just the fact that he doesn't appear. It's not him. I know the ending of Moana 1 is very much fighting against giant volcano lady, but the fact that we know this is a actual god, an actual being, and we see him as a being in the post-credits, and it's just his curse that's there, that disappears immediately upon a human touching the island, and then that's it. is a little underwhelming. I think there should have been more of like, oh, we don't even see, I don't even think we properly see his face in the sky again, other than in flashbacks. It's a way of like minimizing this drama, as if to say there's a bigger drama later, but you'll see that later. Here's the minimized milquetoast version in the meantime. The fact that we're fighting an ominous storm is also just kind of generic. It's, oh, we're on a boat, let's run away from the tornadoes, and then touch the thing underwater. It's not so much a conflict other than tackling lightning strings. It's nice, it's interesting. It's not the best it could be, it only feels like build-up. Hey there, thank you for making it halfway through this video. Come along and subscribe if you want to keep up with other new movie reviews. If you're interested in Disney stuff, we're doing Mufasa when that comes out, and Inside Out 2 is a new Amazing soon. Anyway, if you're subscribed, let's get back to the second half of the video. It feels like something that was meant to be like a villain of the week in the mid part of the series before doing the second half of the series, or the second series entirely, with Matangi at the center, but they haven't really done that. They're not even insinuating she's the big bad next time. She's just around. Of course, the final battle itself was interesting enough in that it's fighting against wind. I do find it funny that the engineer architect lady invented a parachute midway through the journey, being like, that's the thing that's going to make us fast enough. Nothing like a parachute in the middle of a tornado storm. That can't go wrong at all, and somehow it doesn't. But hey, you know, that's some fun Disney magic, ooh, it works anyway kind of logic. After spending so long showcasing all these different boat prototypes, I half was expecting one to be an actual motorized motor just for a gag that she chucks away to the side. They do add a gag about butt dial and it being relevant 2,000 years later, which I genuinely actually quite enjoyed. But yeah, at least action set pieces, you know, it was always going to be pretty nice. The visuals are, of course, absolutely fantastic. It's high-end, mainline Disney budget here, and I love a lot of the set design work. The giant clam, I love. The goopy underground world is a nice knockoff of Tamatoa's place, and the storm, yeah, looks visually nice along the way. You have some great spiritual energy vibes, which is also really, like, maybe somewhat emotional, yeah, but also just nice and ethereal in general. Oh, and before I forget, one more character that I really did enjoy and I'm surprised by is the little coconut guy. I don't know if the Kakamora guy got a name, necessarily, but I'm surprised I really enjoyed him. When I first saw the first impressions of these trailers, I was like, we're just running the same beats again. I don't want to see all the same characters. But to learn that this whole tribe has the similar goal of wanting to reunite to their own hometown when they were more connected is really nice. And having these genuine moments between coconuts that are like, you know, the warrior call for each other was honestly, weirdly, one of the most emotional parts of the movie for me. I really enjoyed the clear camaraderie they had between them. But again, as a little partner to be joining the crew, I needed a little bit more runtime because the coconut doesn't interact with anybody else. There's not really a scene or a shot where the coconut's interacting with anyone else in the crew other than Moana to point at things, and one scene of him stroking Hey the chicken. Also, the chicken's back, also the pig. The chicken, the pig, Moana, Maui, 3 crew members, and a coconut guy. 8 people all rammed into a raft. Yeah, this is the plotline of a TV series all crammed together into one place. But, oddly enough, I love them the most. I wish they got all the runtime that you needed. Honestly, I'd have a dedicated episode and I'd love it a lot. Again, great expansions, just not enough to it. But then there's more. This is, of course, a Disney musical. Let's talk about the music for a minute. It's not Lin-Manuel Miranda, and it shows. Some of the highlights of the musical elements of this movie is when they called back to parts from earlier movies, and it really is weird. It felt like they weren't trying to me. I've not got the ear for musical song numbers or anything, but like, after hearing the Lion King Mufasa trailer beforehand with this big, uproarious orchestra, to hear the Moana one where it's like a little bit of an orchestra, but we're kind of dinky in the background, was surprisingly like not as emotionally impactful as Disney clearly have the ability to do. Maybe it's because it's not themed enough for the vibes of the circle of life or something. But also, even then, this might be very ignorant of me to say, but like, doesn't a key change make a song better? Can't we just put a key change in every one of these songs and we'll be like, oh, we're on board now, you know? It's kind of like the I Am Moana line, right? That one line is like the highest line of that song. I am Moana. Like, it's like, whoa, oh, she's going. She's got a roompher into it. In the new version, it's like, whatever it is, go beyond. Do I go beyond? Beyond. Like, that's not at all how the song goes. Clearly, I'm not a musician, and I'm listening to music while I say this, so I can't remember the song in my head. But it was very much like they weren't trying to hit a high note or, like, go up It was just like, and we will go beyond. I can't wait to go, if I think I should, beyond. And then they do have one line that's higher pitched. It's, I am Moana again. The same line as before. Whereas, like, if it was like, ba-da-da-da-da, and I'll go beyond. Like, I feel like this is a really stupid musical chord. I'm clearly not a musical critic. But, like, where's the oomph, you know, that it could have been in any of these songs? There is a little bit from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, oddly enough, being like, can I get a chee-hoo? And it's like, okay. He's trying a little bit. There's a little bit of chutzpah in there. And I did like the Matangi Bat song. That was nice, enjoyable. Kind of a generic plotline. Get lost. You should get lost to be found. Alright, you know. By a lot of counts, it felt like it wasn't pushing the boundaries and was just by the numbers. With so many elements of the story slapped together, the musical element just seemed like it was doing more of the same, but not as well as the first time. Lin-Manuel Miranda's got another wintertime gig set in summery warmland with Mufasa, like next month. Although, to be honest, I was never really crazy about Disney musicals for the musical number. I like Moana for the plotline. The songs are nice, but, you know, they're more memes to me at this point. But hey, now that we've talked about the character, the final boss, some set pieces and the music, let's talk about the big ending part of the narrative, the more ethereal side of life, right? There's a good chunk of good, there's a good chunk of bad, if you ask me. One of the early bad signs for me is the fact that after all of this deliberating over whether she should go out one more time, Moana is then quickly and immediately visited by the ancestral ghost of her grandma that I think is like one of those, we gotta chuck him in there, it's an emotional beat, but with none of the emotional weight behind it. It's just like, oh, grandma, hi, I'll hug you on the coast now. Whereas the ethereal nature of the Moana story can be some of the highest highlights of the whole movie if done with the right amount of space and, what do you know, runtime again. And that was an early sign. She comes back multiple times throughout this movie, which, fair enough, but so early I wasn't a fan of. What I was a fan of course, is the early ancestral event of being visited by another ancestor. Having them be here as the marker of, hey, I only got so far, I need you to finish my quest, is a decent enough plotline. It makes enough sense. I really liked it. And it also helps to really underplay the theme of death in this show, since anyone is just a permanent ghost and can witness everything that happens, and can travel the entire ocean to get back home, but yeah, don't think about that too hard. But that was a nice, ethereal moment there. It's cool that they can just summon a comet to be the guiding star. Bit weird that after seeing the comet, Moana's like, maybe I should go follow the comet. I'm gonna and ah about it. Then I'm gonna talk to my family. Then I'm gonna go out to the coast. Then I'm gonna talk to my grandma. Then I'm gonna sing a song about it. The song's gonna go all the way to sunrise. They're gonna do a song number further into the day. Then I'm gonna give a speech to the rest of my island saying that I'm going to go and follow the comet that I would assume only lasts for like half an hour in the sky normally. Then I'm gonna finally start hiring a crew together. We're gonna spend a little bit of time building a bigger boat to make it happen. And then we're gonna go follow the comet in the middle of the daytime. And it sure is lucky it hasn't passed by that time. I think that kind of pacing bothered me because I was thinking about it the whole time. When I saw the comet being like, you gotta go, I thought it was like, oh, we gotta go. Oh, there's an inner conflict. Oh, the child's upset, but we gotta go. And it wasn't, and that kind of took the wind out of the sails for me. But anyway, skipping to other ethereal moments. In being visited by this ancestral ghost spirit, there's an element of Moana's in this flashback in a ghostly plane that I thought was really brilliant and lovely to see. I loved the smudged aesthetic they had, and they had this lovely shot of the ancestor presented as a giant whale. Great for the trailer. It looked like a beginning of the third act kind of big moment, and it was just, again, chucked out for like the first 15 minutes of the movie. It felt like I saw 80% of the trailer shots, which you'd think were the whole plotline, and they crammed them all into the first 15 minutes in a way that made them less impactful than they could have been. But the real impactful cinematic final act ethereal moment was then after defeating the instant curse solution of touch rock and everything's removed plotline, whereby not only has Maui sacrificed himself, being bolted by lightning, losing his demigod tattoos and becoming a human again, but at the same time, Moana sacrifices herself, swimming down into the ocean to touch this island, because there's always another way to get to the island if it's underwater. See it underwater. Oh, but I did like how you then saw, with the curse gone, the ocean could go and give him a breathing pocket of air, and all of her ancestors surround her, following her like some sort of Avatar The Last Airbender moment, and surrounding her, right? That's like a really nice, beautiful moment. It's then also the classic, Disney characters almost dead, and then they live. For some reason, the ancestors in watching are able to bestow the powers of demigod energy through their souls, which I would assume is kind of biased, because, you know, they're just Moana's ancestors. Can't they give that to anyone they really want to? Like, the grandma was basically the one that did it. She was the final one to touch her. She's got a bias, you know? But then, the next big bit, with all of these choirs singing in the background, which is genuinely really nice. Disney has a surprising, like, theme of doing that between Lion King and this, and I think it's actually some of their best work. And then Moana is blessed with the powers of demigod tattoos herself. It's not full body thick tattoos like Maui, it's thin line art on half of an arm, because we've got to be a little bit quaint here. She is a pseudo Disney princess that's not a princess. Although also maybe it's because Maui's actually done experiences as demigods and she'll get more tattoos later. I hope she will. I know she won't, but it's still, there you go. A Disney-ish princess with tattoos, wahoo. But then upon reviving herself, having, whoa, demigod powers, she's been blessed by magic, by ghosts that don't have demigod powers. Does she showcase some demigod abilities? Does she fly by her oar that is also now bestowed with this power? Again, nice that there's an item to associate with the demigod power. Lovely, worked with the first movie, yada yada. Does she fly directly upwards with her oar? Does she become an animal herself? Does she burst out of the ocean in some big powerful way? No, she gets her oar, she touches the water around her and it makes it a little bit orange as if someone peed in the ocean around her. And then the ocean itself and the island lifts up with her. She is alive, she is singing, she's a demigod, but she's not doing any demigod stake things. It gave her the ability to breathe. Why didn't it give her anything more? Like, why didn't we see anything more? It seems like, right, it is demigod powers, right? She's got tattoos. She's gonna have a little bit of Maui-ness to her. Why didn't they show a little bit of power from that rather than this makes you breathe again? Anyway, epilogue, have a good time. Show off your little finger tattoos. Maybe you'll use some cool powers with your oar in future. You know what I mean? There's a lot of really great ideas. Turning this human into a demigod, I think, is like absolutely brilliant. Because, I mean, Maui themselves was a human turned demigod. I mean, their mother just abandoned them by rocks and he was blessed for some reason, whereas Moana has to go through all these trials and earn such an accolade. But even still, I love that story expansion, and it clearly sort of seems like this was meant to go into, Matangi's the real big bad Batgirl, and Moana's now leveled up with the ability of demigod powers combined together for a proper final act climax. But they cut it off early, and it just feels a little bit underwhelming to make that cut so early. I think across the board, the movie is palatable. The families around me certainly enjoyed it. They weren't exactly hustling and bustling at the songs, but the concept of the world in general is fine. It's just the execution for all these new great elements they've incorporated do not have the runtime or the depth and exploration to fully master their existence into the story in a way that elevates it beyond the first movie. There's a brilliant world in Moana, and it's only gotten more brilliant as they've added these expansions, but I'm left conceptualizing ideas around how I would want things to go or how I imagine the world building works. I want to see more gigantic, colossal clam creatures, you know? I want to see more monsters the size of islands now that we've established that's a thing. And more so just like around us, interesting set pieces to explore. I mean, honestly, the worst thing I think they added really is the weird slime creature for a gag that unironically does the screaming goat meme. When was that even relevant? 7 years ago that was relevant, at the earliest, if not 11. I'm finding a video from 11 years ago with 50 million views that says funny goats screaming. Like, that is beyond old and ancient. That was a joke that was relevant when Moana's ancestors were still around. I can't believe that somehow. That was easily the worst joke in the whole thing. The jokes in general were alright. Maui, for some reason, has a lot more fourth wall breaking ones. I really like the retired guy complaining half the time. Everything else wasn't that crazy funny. It was just sort of surprisingly, I guess, serious? I don't think it was ever serious. It was just fine, you consume. Didn't like any of the pig jokes. And the chicken ones didn't do anything too new either. It was less funny and just more inconvenient, which in itself is meant to be a gag. Not that great. But I think overall, this feels like a movie that is only 2/3 done. In the sense of, they've only told us 2/3 of the plotline. There's clearly a whole other act waiting that they've just cut off early, and maybe we'll get a Moana 3. Let's be honest, if this gets anywhere close to a successful release, we're of course getting a Moana 2. The cinema where I went to wasn't actually that full. Maybe it was because it was 10 o'clock on a Friday, so school's still ongoing maybe. But they clearly have the lead up to it. There's a post-credits where we actually see the god who created the curse, who just decided not to show up in the movie. You have Matangi, Batgirl, just arriving as a lackey to say some words. Oh, and Tamatoa appears again. in the most egregious, hey, I'm here just to tell a little gang I'm a funny little dude. And it's like, oh, please, you've lost everything. I have lost all respect for you as a character now. Shut up. Go back to your hole. Your appearance in this movie has actively made you worse in general. It was just a marble quip of a gag. Maybe they're doing studies to see if we want to see him in the third one. I don't know. But overall, this is very clearly just a Disney Plus series that got the extra bump into a movie, which makes it the best looking TV series expansion, but a lesser movie because of it. They didn't incorporate and explore all of the elements the TV series really wanted to do well enough, but they did add a lot of interesting new ideas that just weren't executed to my full liking. I can see how this is a high 80% with audiences. If you want to see a Disney musical, there it is, some sort of Disney musical. It's not Wish, you know? The standards are pretty low. But for critics, 60-ish% sounds about right. It's just not got that impact it could have had. It just doesn't have it in the runtime. But I guess really we could have predicted that from the start, ever since learning this was a Disney Plus series first. On that note, though, I shall finally end it off there. That's at least my review so far of Disney's Moana 2. When this comes out on DVD, we'll probably make a saucy little amazing or terrible episode on it. We'll see what my consensus is after a couple of months. But for now, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell me your thoughts on Moana 2. Do you feel the same? What expansion do you love the most? Or do you think another element was even more egregious? Let me know down below, and I shall see you in a little bit.